Today's episode of Lions of Liberty is brought to you by MathBot.com. MathBot.com is a fun little game that fills a serious hole that the public and even the private schools miss, and that is knowledge of programming and the math behind programming. MathBot.com gives parents a much-needed tool to make sure their children don't fall behind in this new information age. Software is eating the world, and those who don't know how to code will be left behind as more and more jobs become automated. MathBot.com gives kids and even adults like me the knowledge needed to thrive in this new world. MathBot may just seem like a fun and simple game, but behind the scenes it uses the same method Julius Caesar, Isaac Newton, Einstein, and everyone else were all taught math before the state got its greasy hands into education. This method goes all the way back to classical Greece, the dawn of civilization. MathBot will gradually upload the math and logical skills needed to understand programming into the mind of any player. It's said that the pen is mightier than the sword, but now code is even mightier than the pen. So become mighty and learn to code over at mathbot.com.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Claire.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the flagship Lions of Liberty podcast, the original program here at Lions of Liberty that I have been doing for over 5 years, bringing you great interviews with amazing minds in the Liberty movement. And I gotta say, you've got an incredible interview coming today. One that truly did blow my mind several times, but it's not just me. It's not just me here at Lions of Liberty. I've got several friends in Liberty, several compatriots, several fellow Lions of Liberty hosts who bring you their own unique style of program, starting with Brian McWilliams every Wednesday. He slaps you right upside the head with his often drunken and always foul-mouthed take on liberty. In Electric Liberty Land, his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty. And of course, John Odermatt brings you his hard-hitting weekly look at the broken criminal justice system on Felony Friday. Many good reasons to just hit that subscribe button no matter where it is you listen to this show, whether it's on iTunes, whether it's on Stitcher, whether it's on YouTube, whether you scream to Alexa, "Alexa, play me the Lions of Liberty podcast" on TuneIn, because that too will allow you to hear the Lions of Liberty podcast. Many ways to listen, many ways not to listen as well, just by not doing any of those things. But I don't recommend that. I recommend listening to this program. And if you just can't get enough, we do even more content over at our Patreon, over at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. If 3 shows per week is not enough for you, be sure to head on over there. And for as little as $5 a month, you can join the Lions of Liberty Pride and get access to all of our exclusive audio content. There's also video content for anyone who joins at 10 or higher. We do video editions of all of our bonus shows. And just last week, if you had ever wanted to hear libertarians talking about Bigfoot, well, we have the show for you. Our latest Conspiracy Corner dives into that very subject. And then towards the end of this month, we're going to be doing a Patreon-only edition of Libertarians in Living Rooms Drinking Liquor. We do not have an episode of that program coming at you this month on the free feed. I have so many great interviews coming at you on Mondays that we just couldn't really work that into the rotation. So instead, we are doing that for our Patreon subscribers only. We're going to allow you to take questions from our secret Facebook group, and we will answer them in drunken roundtable forums. So again, check it all out at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Let's get into today's show. All right, with me today is a libertarian musician and activist. He often opened for a guy named Dr. Ron Paul during his presidential campaigns, and he has toured nationally performing for liberty-oriented causes and groups, including most recently last year at the Walkaway March in D.C. He also recently released the single, The Ballad of Lavoy Finicum, which tells the story of the rancher who was murdered by federal agents 3 years ago. The song is being featured in a new documentary series called Dead Man Talking. I'm very pleased to welcome for the first time, Mr. Jordan Page. Jordan, are you ready to roar?
That
was a good one. That almost had like a hint of Chewbacca in it.
I was going for Tigger, but I'll take Chewbacca.
It was like a purr meets a roar. I like it.
Well, thanks for having me on, Marc.
Great, man. It's good to have you here, Jordan. And since it is your first time, we got a little business to take care of first, and that is to figure out just how you got here, Jordan. How did you first take interest in libertarian ideas?
Well, Mark, I grew up in a very liberal household, very democratic-leaning household, and I think I probably had a lot of those ideals starting out in life. And I went to a liberal arts college, so I got a lot of that there too. But I was also raised in a Christian household and had that doctrine and belief system in my heart. Just a little guy, but as far as politics goes, I was completely illiterate. You and I 12, 13 years ago could not have had a conversation about politics because I would not have been competent to have participated in it.
And neither would I have, so it would have been a really, really rough one.
Well, I didn't, and I also didn't care. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to live my life and do what I wanted to do and focus on the things I was interested in, and I was not interested in politics whatsoever. But I had an experience, and I've had a lot of weird experiences in my life, and so this is nothing unusual, but December the 1st of 2006, I was asleep, and I was having a dream about George Bush and the state of the world. And I woke up and I went into my office and I sat down at my computer, half asleep, eyes half closed, and just started typing. And within about 6 or 7 minutes, this poem, this prose had just appeared on the screen, and I read it. I wasn't even thinking about it as I wrote it. I just read it after I'd written it. And I realized like this was very political. It had lots of political imagery in it and references that I didn't even understand. I mean, that's how in the dark I was. I didn't even understand it. And I had a buddy in Seattle who was a political activist, very left leaning. But I thought maybe I'd call him. Maybe he would understand it. And so I dialed the number, but I dialed his old number, and his mom was on the phone. I get her on the phone, and she says, "Well, read it to me." And I read it to her, and she says, "Wow, it's amazing, but it makes me sad that someone your age," I was 26 at the time, she says, "I'm sorry that someone your age feels this way about their country." She says, "Just remember, the pendulum swings left and right. So just when you're tired of it being one way, it's going to go the other way." And I heard a voice in my head say, "Listen to her." I thanked her for her time. We hung up the phone. I look, and all of a sudden, my guitar just magically appears in the room. It wasn't in there before that I was aware of. So I reach out and I grab it and I just pick it up and I strum a G chord and I just said, "The pendulum swings from the left to the right." And I wrote this chorus. I inserted it into the song. Boom, instant song. And this song scared the hell out of me, Mark. And I wouldn't play it for anyone. And I finally got the courage to play it. I had a show at the Ram's Head on Stage in Annapolis, which is this really beautiful theater. Had like 400 people, sold out show. And it's the middle of the show, and I'm like, man, I got to break this song out. I got to know. I got to see what they're going to say. Are they going to throw tomatoes? I got to find out. So I played the song, and I got a standing ovation from the whole theater. It was so loud, it was making my ears crackle, It was so loud. And I heard a voice say, "These people know what this song is about. You don't, but they do. Now it's time for you to go figure it out." And I heard the lyrics from the song "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall" by Bob Dylan. It says, "I'll know my song well before I start singing." And that's what I had to go do. And so I just dove head first. I was all in, commitment to the truth, all in, just dove head first into the information ocean of horrible, horrible information that there is all over the internet. And I've never come out of the rabbit hole. I started reading books by G. Edward Griffin. I started reading books by Tom Woods, by, Bastiat, Ron Paul. But actually, that's not even true, because I didn't even know who Ron Paul was at the time. When I came to Liberty, I had no idea that there was this guy named Ron Paul, no idea there was a Liberty movement. I was so naive, I thought I was going to have to start a movement. But I was ready to quit, man. I was ready. But over the next year, over 2007, I slowly came to understand that there's this whole resistance movement, and that a lot of it was centered around this guy, Ron Paul, who was a Republican. And I was raised to hate Republicans, of course. And so, but I listened to him and I showed him to my wife, and I was like, this guy is awesome. And I started stalking Gary Franchi, if you know who he is. He was with Restore the Republic. Now he's the host of Next News Network. He's become one of my really close friends over the years. I started stalking him. My wife stalked him, actually. We got Pendulum recorded and got it in front of him. And he was like, well, you got to come perform at the Revolution March in D.C. And that was in July of 2008. And that's when I met Gary. That's when I met Ernest Hancock. That's when I met Adam Kokesh. And that's when I met Ron Paul for the first time, was when I opened for him at the Revolution March. And it's just been a crazy whirlwind experience ever since.
Jordan, I've been doing this program, interviewing people and asking them that same basic question for over 5 years. How did you first become interested in libertarian ideas? How did you get here? And I'm pretty sure I can confidently say that is the most fascinating story that I've ever heard in my life about how someone got down this path. I mean, so obviously, knowing your background, you take this as sort of a religious experience, I guess. This was basically a voice that sent you this message, sent you this song that would become the Pendulum song and sort of lead you down that path. Can you sort of detail that a little bit more? Like, what was the actual content of the message? Because, I mean, you say you didn't really even understand what it meant at the time, but based on that phone call you mentioned, I got to imagine it seemed to come more from the right perspective, I guess, or the libertarian perspective.
Libertarian all the way. Yeah, I didn't go from the left over to the right. I went from being completely just politically agnostic, but probably leaning more left just because I was brainwashed to being straight down the middle, like libertarian. And libertarianism took me to the philosophy of anarchy, which I consider myself, philosophically, I consider myself an anarchist for sure. You know, I believe now that government, you know, involuntary violent government has always been the bane of humanity. It's always been the enemy of the human race. And that when we come together and work together for a mutual advantage voluntarily, I believe in voluntarism, that is where amazing things happen. That's where human beings really shine and do incredible things. But when people are compelled by violence and force, coercion, threats of violence, force and coercion and imprisonment, that this is where, you know, like we go to the more base, dark aspects of our nature. And I advocate for voluntarism. I consider myself a Christian anarchist. Absolutely. But I never heard the word libertarian before I'd written the song Pendulum. So Pendulum is full of references to things like the Federal Reserve. You know, I saw a group of old men whose money was evil. I saw a cross breaking free from the cage of a steeple. You know, I mean, it's full of these harsh indictments against all these different institutions, and even institutions that I subscribe to. Like I'm pointing out their hypocrisies. I think there's a lot of references to the talking heads syndrome that we have, where people are listening to these talking heads on TV, spoon feeding their reality to them and lying to them, and just the state of the world, you know, falling into chaos through war. I mean, this song turned me into an anti-war activist overnight. And I discovered, you know, Alex Jones and InfoWars, and I discovered, you know, all these different outlets of information that I watched a lot of documentaries, and America, Freedom to Fascism, the Aaron Russo film. You know, these things played a big part in helping me to have some context to these messages that I was being given that I didn't understand, but it also helped me to understand like the gravity of the situation worldwide, and like where these wars come from, who starts them, who benefits from them, and what the aftermath of them causes. And not just wars abroad, but the war at home, the war for our minds, and the war on drugs, the prison industrial complex, you know, prohibition, all these things that I came to really understand these issues in depth, so that I could speak intelligently about them, and not for my own benefit, but for, you know, the benefit of the country, of my fellow man, and ultimately my children. I mean, they're the reason I do what I do, because I'm trying to create a better world for them. And if I shut my mouth, Mark, then I'm basically contributing to the problem. I mean, if you're silent in the face of tyranny, you're complicit in that tyranny. So I refuse to be complicit in my own enslavement and in the enslavement of my children. I'm teaching them. You know, we have 7 kids. My wife and I have 7 little Liberty babies. And, you know, we're raising them to be free thinkers and to question, you know, even question what we're telling them. Look it up for yourself, you know, and learn the truth, like seek the truth always. So that's really the message of Pendulum is, you know, like the pendulum is society and government's influence going back and forth, left, right, but it's all really the same. The two parties don't really have any major difference, other than these hot button issues they use to divide us to maintain their control. But in the end of the day, we're all stuck in the middle. And that's what the song says. The pendulum swings from the left to the right. Its momentum increases the need for the fight, like a blindfold when it's time to walk toward the light. And I'm lost somewhere in the middle. That's the chorus of the song.
I'm just blown away I'm still blown away and a little bit hung up on the fact that this just came to you seemingly out of the blue, where previously you just did not have that much interest in the political messages and even in figuring out what politics was until this song came to you. And I guess you could say you've sort of been roaring for liberty ever since then.
Oh, it gets weirder than that, man. I got another short story I could tell you about the song that really makes it weird.
Bring it. Let's go deeper.
So the song got really weird for me when, after I played it live, there was a guy at the show. His name's Ted Kelly. He's become a very good friend of mine, and he was a host on XM radio of the channel UPop. And he comes to me and says, I want you to come on my show and play this song live, but I want you to have a recording of it too so we can put it in rotation. So I got contacted the next week by a local studio who said, we saw you at that show. We want you to come in and we're going to give you a free song because we do mostly gospel stuff. We want to get into rock. We'll just give you a free song. Do you have a song you'd like to do? And I was like, yeah. So I record the song. I send it to Ted Kelly. He starts playing it on his channel, but on like 6 other channels. I start getting emails from all over the world, from Belgium, Brussels, from Germany. People are saying this song encapsulates so perfectly everything I think about what's going on in the world. Oh my God. And I'm like, dude, don't look at me. I didn't write the damn song. Like, I'm just like the guy singing it, right? And so then we get it, like Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul, and Mary. You familiar with Peter, Paul, and Mary?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been listening to this guy's music since I was a kid. My mom was a huge fan. My dad used to sing their songs to me when I was a little baby to put me to sleep at night. I know this man's music. So he gets in touch with us and says he heard the song and loved it. And he wants me to come to New York to spend some time with him. So my wife and I drive up to New York from Maryland, and we meet Peter Yarrow at his swanky apartment in the East Village. He's got a door, like an elevator doorman, the whole thing. We go up, and his apartment is like this 2-story apartment. It's got to be multi-million-dollar complex. Amazing place. The walls are covered in pictures of him with like Martin Luther King and like, all these like amazing like civil rights activists and political figures. And he's like this larger than life kind of personality. And we're having a great time. We're talking, and then things stops. He pulls up a chair. He sits me down, hands me my guitar. He pulls up a chair in front of me. He's sitting knee to knee with me. Like his knees are just about touching my knees. He's leaning forward like this. And I don't know if the audience can see me, but he says, all right, I want you to play Pendulum for me right now. And so I'm like, okay. So
with that intense gaze.
This guy he never blinks. He's a wonderful man, but he never blinks. And he's looking at me with this intense stare. And I play Pendulum for him, and I'm singing it right into his soul, And the end of the song comes, and I'm like, I nailed that, And he's looking at me, and he's like, wow, that is just wonderful. He says, okay, I want you to play it one more time for me, please. And I'm like, I look at Mary, and she's like, just do it. Like, don't ask questions, just do it. So I'm like, okay, you want to hear it again? I can play for you again. Like, fine. So I played it again, and this time I put everything I had in my soul into the song, right? Like performance-wise. And he's looking at me the entire time, right into my eyes. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And so I finished the song, and I'm like, okay, that time I freaking nailed it. There's no chance anything weird's going to happen. And he's like, okay, that was even better than the first time. He's like, you're going to think I'm crazy. But I'm going to ask you as a favor to play it one more time. And now my heart sinks. I'm frustrated. I want to get the hell out of here. Like that's how I felt at the time. Look at Mary. She's like, just do it, So I play it the third time, and halfway through, I have this profound realization. The verses of Pendulum are like written out like, I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction. I've been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons. Second verse, I saw a president blind to the needs of his people. I saw a camel that passed through the eye of a needle. Third verse, I heard the echo of suffering in the valley of laughter. I heard, I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but like, it's like where I've been, who I've met, what I heard, what I'm going to do now. Okay. And then I'm playing Pendulum. And I have this realization, the third time for Peter Yarrow, that the verses of Pendulum are answers to the questions that are being asked in Bob Dylan's song, A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. Okay, where have you been, my blue-eyed son? Where have you been, my darling young one? I've been out in front of a dozen dead oceans. I've been 10,000 miles in the mouth of a graveyard. Like, what? I saw, this is what I saw, what I heard, in order, my song that I wrote in the middle of the night, half asleep, not even thinking about anything. Those verses match up perfectly as answers to those questions in that song. Okay? So I'm freaking out. I'm geeking out about it. I'm like excited to realize this. And I finished the song and I'm like, Peter, I don't know why you asked me to sing this song 3 times. I thought you were nuts. But I just had this realization. I tell him what it was. And without missing a beat, he leans in. He says, well, you know where Bobby got that song from, don't you? And I'm like, Bobby? You mean Bob Dylan? You call him Bobby?
Bobby.
He says, Bobby got that song from a 15th century English folk song called Lord Randall, My Son. Where have ye been, Lord Randall, my son? Where have ye been, my darling young one? And it's a mother talking to her son, Randall, who's dying in her arms because he's been shot, stabbed, poisoned, and beaten. And he's telling her what happened and how he came into this state. And Bob Dylan used the framework of that song to write Hard Rain's Gonna Fall in 1963. So he reaches out like this, grabs the guitar, he holds it way up high like this, and starts singing it to me. He sings me the whole song. And so I'm watching this icon of the 60s civil rights movement. I'm in his apartment. I get tunnel vision, like everything is black around his face. Just his face is all I can see. He's singing me this song that some unknown bard from the 15th century wrote in England that influenced Bob Dylan in 1963 to write this iconic song, an anti-war song, that somehow cosmically transferred to me in 2006 in the middle of the night out of a dream that ended me with the song spreading all over the world, got me involved in the Liberty movement, had me doing all this crazy stuff with Ron Paul, and ended me in this situation. It was like this time vortex craziness.
And eventually brought you to the precipice here at the Lions of Liberty
Exactly.
podcast.
That's how it happened.
From Bob Dylan to this is unbelievable, Jordan. Unbelievable. Hey friends, I got to take a quick pause here to tell you about another great libertarian podcast out there. It's called Free Man Beyond the Wall, hosted by the artist formerly known as Mance Rayder, now known simply by his real name of Pete Raymond. And I got to tell you, Pete is a machine. This guy brings you a new episode of his own every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and he has done some absolutely fantastic in-depth interviews. He's had on everybody from Ron Paul to Thaddeus Russell to Phil Labonte, the lead singer of All That Remains, a very diverse group of guests, not always libertarians. He also did a great show with a Washington, D.C. insider lobbyist revealing a lot of the dirt that goes on behind the scenes in DC. He has done so many interviews that I have just said, darn, I wish I did this one myself. So I really do want to highly recommend checking out Free Man Beyond the Wall. You can find it over at freemanbeyondthewall.com, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and all those fancy podcatchers out there. Well, I take it since that time, I mean, you've really have used your music to continue to sort of spread a message and to, to focus on oftentimes on some specific causes as of lately. I really do want to get into the story of Lavoy Finicum here. Right. I could probably do another hour listening to you, tell me these stories about the cosmic synergy.
Oh, I've got so many, man.
Music and your
okay. we can
make a whole podcast series out of it.
We could definitely move on. We could talk about whatever you want. Yeah.
Sure. So why don't you get into the Lavoy Finicum case just a little bit here? I don't know how. I'm sure people that are fans of this show are probably more likely to be familiar with it than others out there. But for those not aware of how this came out, why don't you just give us the basics of the story of what started as essentially a protest against BLM and how it got us to this point?
Okay, so we begin the story in Bunkerville, Nevada, with the Bundy Ranch standoff, and that was a major win for the people because the Bureau of Land Management, also known as BLM, not to be confused with Black Lives Matter, but the Bureau of Land Management is essentially a front for a criminal government enterprise. They are a terrorist organization that uses force and intimidation and violence to enact a political agenda, and that agenda is the subjugation of the Western United States and the subjugation of the land. Specifically, they want control of all the land in the western half of the United States. And if you look at a map that shows BLM controlled land, it's like 98% of the land in the West is controlled by the Bureau of Land Management. And so the BLM really is just a front for, criminal government elements to exploit that land for its natural resources, to earn a profit. And the Bundy Ranch is no exception. And there was a standoff that happened that with federal agents and armed protesters, and the feds backed down. They realized that they weren't going to be able to win this, that this was a complete nightmare for them, and they backed off, and it was a major victory. So there's a ranching family up in Oregon, in Harney County, Oregon, the Hammond family, and they were a very well-to-do, wealthy ranching family, been there for generations. And the BLM had been oppressing them for decades. The Hammonds had spent over $1 million in litigation costs fighting the BLM, who were constantly trying to screw them out of their land, take their land, force them off their land. And in the end, BLM agents lit a wildfire on their property with the intent of burning down their house. And Dwight and Stephen Hammond, father and son, went out and they lit what we call a backfire, which is a technique in ranching to stop a wildfire from spreading. You use fire to stop fire, and they saved their home. And for doing this, they were charged with domestic terrorism because the backfire that they lit, part of it went on to BLM-controlled land, which is considered federal land, even though there's no such thing as federal land. The federal government is not allowed to own land outside of the 10 miles square of Washington, D.C., and any small parcels that they purchase from the states for needful buildings, armories, post offices, things like that. They are not allowed to own, by the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the United States, they are not allowed to own any land other than what I've just mentioned. And so
they're sort of ignoring that one.
They're completely ignoring it, but more importantly, the people are ignoring it. The people are just completely enslaved to the point where they don't even care that the government does these things. And so they charged them with domestic terrorism and for lighting this fire, and they gave them a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years. They brought in an outside judge that's not from that county who got a major promotion to become this judge for this case, specifically to sentence these two particular men to prison. The Hammonds were told that if they fought the decision, or if they went public with the decision, or just went public in any way with the information, privately they were told that that their entire family would be buried in the desert. And so rather than risk their families' lives, they stayed quiet and just took the prison sentence. And while this was all taking place, Ammon Bundy and Ryan Bundy from the Bundy Ranch standoff, and a number of other ranchers and patriots from that standoff went to Harney County to protest this. And their method of protest was to peacefully occupy, though armed, they peacefully occupied an empty government building, which was the Malheur Wildlife Refuge. Malheur is how you spell Malheur. So they occupied the Malheur Wildlife Refuge because it was the administrative staging ground for the BLM's terrorist activities in Harney County. So all of their records were there, and their plan was to build a case against BLM, and that they could take to court and prove what they were doing by their own admission. And that was the point of all that. And Lavoy Finicum was an Arizona rancher who was friends with the Bundys for many, many years and very close. And he went to support them, and he went to support the Constitution. These guys were pegged as anti-government extremists. They could have been anything but. They were all very pro-government, but they were pro-constitutional government. I'm an anti-government extremist. I mean, and proud of it. I mean, I'm a non-violent extremist. I don't believe in violence, but I'm certainly anti-government. I want to get rid of the federal government. But these guys were all about the government, but they wanted the government to follow the rules. And, for me, that's a fool's errand, but that's another story. But this was their motivation, is what I'm saying. It was a noble motivation, and it was. I don't have a problem with what they did at all, because they're trying to work within the system, and that was their prerogative. But in the end, it was a peaceful demonstration, Mark. A peaceful demonstration. They hurt no one. They even cleaned up the grounds around the refuge and did construction and made it better. It was falsely reported that they trashed the place. I've seen footage and pictures of the place. It looked better than when they got there. I mean, they really were great stewards of the land and of the facility. And they came and went from the facility. They went, once the FBI and law enforcement showed up, they came and went every day and were unobstructed. There was no problem. And then Lavoy Finicum became really the spokesman of this movement. And he was very articulate and could articulate the constitutional principles with great ease. He was a very intelligent man, very well-spoken man, and was a credible spokesperson, a credible representation of why they were there. And he had a plan to help Western ranchers unplug from the Bureau of Land Management system. And that was what got him killed, in my opinion. So they were invited by a neighboring county sheriff to come and make a presentation to him and his department on why they were there and what they were doing and what this plan was. And he asked that they come unarmed. So they left their sidearms at the refuge, and they went in a convoy to go meet him. And Lavoy's van that he was driving was like a big church type van. There were women and children in the van. An Oregon State police officer pulled him over and started shooting at the vehicle, shot out his side mirrors. And Lavoy, for fear of his life and the lives of the people in the van, took off like a bat out of hell and got about 1.5 miles. And around a turn, federal agents had set up what we call a kill stop, which is a complete blockade of the road.
That's what they call it.
That's what they call it. It was a kill stop, which is an illegal tactic. It's an illegal maneuver. They're not even allowed to use that maneuver, which forced Lavoy to make a choice, either to plow into them and kill everyone or plow into the snowbank, because this was in January. We're coming up on the 3rd anniversary in a week or two. And he plowed into the snowbank, and the bullets start flying. So he gets out of the van. This is American hero, this guy. He gets out of the van with his hands up in the air, and this is all corroborated with video evidence, with his hands in the air saying, don't shoot them, shoot me. Don't fire at the vehicle. If you're going to shoot somebody, shoot me. And so what did they do? They shot him 9 times and blew the top of his head off with the final kill shot. And he died in the snow alone, bleeding in the snow. This is an American patriot, a Christian, a good man, a father of 11 children, husband, rancher, American dream all the way, and an absolute hero in the last moments of his life, who took a stand against tyranny and was gunned down in cold blood. And there was no reason for that to take place other than what he was doing for these Western ranchers, because that represents a significant amount of money and control and property value that the BLM wanted control of. Now, the Hammonds had been persecuted because their property rests on a massive uranium deposit. We found this out after all this, after the smoke had cleared. We found out that their property is on a massive uranium deposit, and Hillary Clinton was very involved in this too, because she was involved in trying to get control of their land to sell it to this Russian company, Uranium One.
This ties back into the Russian uranium run conspiracy. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I had no idea there was a connection.
The Uranium One conspiracy with Hillary Clinton ties to the Hammond property because their property rests on a massive uranium deposit, and that's why they were trying to get rid of them, because they wanted to control that property. So talk about Russian collusion. There it is right there. You know what I'm saying?
I had not heard that take on it before.
That's what happened. And that's my understanding of it from everyone involved. And I knew a lot of people that were involved. So here's where it gets really weird. So Lavoy is killed January 26th. Okay. I had been texting with Ammon Bundy about coming to the refuge and putting on a concert for those guys, just a free concert, just to show them some love and some support, right? And we were scheduled for February the 5th to do that. So in the meantime, Lavoy Finicum is killed. And the night that he was killed, I was just full of anger and rage and heartbreak for his family, and just this whole thing's going to just fall apart now, which it did. And I had been disseminating information from my contacts that were there. I was disseminating it all out on the internet to people so they would know what was going on. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm so geed up and like tense with anger that I couldn't even move. And then I had another burning bush experience, Mark, and I had this wave of wind hit me just like whoosh, and it felt like wind, and all those feelings just disappeared, gone. I felt awesome all of a sudden. I hear this little bubble above my head pop, bloop, and a voice says,
a literal thought bubble.
It literally, it sounded like a bubble popping. And then I heard a voice say, "He was a man who loved to walk the land, turn his cheek, but also take a stand." And I'm like, oh, crap. So I got my laptop.
Another song. I'm not sure how much credit I should be giving you as a songwriter right now.
I don't get
credit. It
credit.
seems like all your best stuff comes to you.
I don't take credit for this at all. None. I'm a not so innocent bystander. And so I just start typing what I hear, right? And I write this song over the course of like an hour, just listening to the spirit telling me the words. And I work out the melody. I work out the guitar parts. I'm like, wow, okay, I accept, The next evening, I should say, my wife, Mary, films me on our couch. We're in Montana at the time. Films me on the couch in our living room playing the song. We upload it to YouTube at midnight. By 8 o'clock the next morning, it's had 10,000 views. Okay? So I'm like, okay. 2 days later, I get a phone call from Lavoy Finicum's daughter, Ariana. So she says to me, "I want to thank you for writing this song." She says, "We're all here at the ranch holding each other and crying and mourning the loss of our father. And someone sent us this video of you singing this song. And that song has been giving us hope and been comforting us in this time of grief and fear, and it's giving us hope that our dad won't be forgotten." And I'm like, whoa. Yeah, absolutely. I promise you he will not be forgotten. And then she tells me that they're having his funeral the following weekend, and they'd like me to come down to Kanab, Utah, and perform. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'll find a way to make that happen. And so, here's the problem. I'm contracted to go and perform 2 shows with Rand Paul and Ron Paul in Iowa, because Rand's running for president, right? They'd already paid for my
not the kind of gig you want to miss.
Not the kind of gig I want to miss. But this is this coming weekend. So this, like, I'm talking to her on like the 28th or 29th, and in like a day or two, I'm going. Right, my plane ticket's bought. So I get up to go to do that show. I had to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to get to the airport on time. And it's in a blizzard. So I'm driving out my long forest country road from the ranch where we live. And I get out to the main road and I hear an explosion. And it's my back tire. And I get out of the car. My back tire looks like Wolverine had come and destroyed it with great prejudice. And I'm like, how in the hell did my tire? I mean, I could get a flat tire, but it didn't, like, I've never had a tire completely explode on me. And so I can't get the car off the ground because of the way it's positioned. And I call my wife. She comes, picks me up. She has to get all the kids up, out of their sleep. It's 3 a.m. And she starts taking me to the airport. I calculate that we're going to get to the airport exactly at the moment that my flight takes off. There's no chance I'm going to make this flight. So we head back to the ranch. I call Rand Paul's campaign manager. I'm like, I'm not going to make it. This happened. blah, blah, blah. He says, don't worry about it because there's a massive blizzard coming through Iowa, and most of us are going to be stuck here for at least a week and a half to 2 weeks. There's not going to be any flights getting out. So if you came here, you would be stuck. And that would mean that I wouldn't be able to go to Lavoy's funeral. And Lavoy's funeral was on February the 5th, which I told you earlier was the day I was scheduled to go play a concert for them at the Refuge. I ended up playing Lavoy's funeral instead on the same day.
That is, tell you what, Jordan, your stories have got me thinking about about some things. I'll tell you that.
It gets weirder, man. Talk to me a little longer.
It can't get weirder.
It gets way weirder than that. I got to tell you about my song Rabbit Hole sometime.
All right, well, why don't we do this, Jordan? Why don't we, since we've talked about the song a little bit, why don't we toss to the song right now, let everybody listen to the full song, The Ballad of Lavoy Finicum, and then we'll come back and chat a bit more.
All right, sounds great.
Man who loved to walk the land, turn his cheek but also take a stand. When his conviction called, he followed what he felt was right. Well, there's no telling just what time will bring. You can live for nothing or for everything. When the pushes come to shove and tell me, will you fight? I'm only talking about a cowboy stand for freedom. I'm just talking about a name carved in the stone. A friend and brother to sunrise to dawn, then it's over and the moment's gone. You can testify to the things unseen, but the world is blind, can't see a thing. All you can do is try to be a human being. I'm only talking about a cowboy stand for freedom. I'm just talking about a name carved in a stone. Whoa. A friend and brother to anyone. Well, he's riding off to the setting sun. Drive on cowboys heading home. I know not what course of the man may take. Can't see that far down the road. But as for me and mine, make no mistake. The weight of justice is a heavy load, and I'm living by a code. He left his home to go and take a stand. Well, his voice rang out across the deafening land. But in the end, it was a bullet that exposed the lies. Truth remembered is a battle won, and though his murder cannot be undone, it rings out like an echo, thundering across the night. Well, here's to all
right, and there it was, the Ballad of Lavoy Finicum. And I got to be honest, the type of music you play isn't what I normally listen to in my day-to-day life. But I got to say, when I was listening to this song, obviously I'm inclined to enjoy the music because of the message that you put out there. But I found myself bobbing my head a little bit because even though it's a very serious song, it's got some jam in there, man.
It's got some jam, but honestly, it's a very country western song, and I am not a country western artist. I'm a rock guy. I grew up listening to Metallica and Nine Inch Nails and Pantera,
Right.
And I usually play like a lot harder rock or like folky rock, and
Right.
or southern rock kind of stuff. But this is a vast departure from my usual thing. But I like it too.
Yeah, it's very fitting to who the song is for as well.
Right, it's a cowboy ballad, and
That
like
style.
the style of like Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, like that's what I felt like it was asking to be, and that's kind of where we took the direction with the recording, and it turned out better than I could ever have hoped. And so the song, I released the song. It's on cdbaby.com. It's on Amazon. It's on Google Play, on iTunes. It's everywhere you can download music or stream music. You'll find this song. I am giving half the proceeds to Lavoy's widow, Jeanette, to help with her wrongful death lawsuit against the federal agencies that murdered her husband. And that is a really expensive process. So I wanted to help her with that. So I've committed publicly to giving her half the proceeds, as long as the song is for sale. And hopefully that will help her. Also, the song is going to be featured in the upcoming documentary series, as you mentioned earlier, Dead Man Talking, which is a series put on that's being produced by the Center for Self-Governance. And it's all about Lavoy, his life, his death, his activism, his message, and the aftermath. And so this song will be in part 3, which will be coming out this year.
Good stuff, Jordan. Well, I mean, like I said, not only is your journey to liberty pretty mind-blowing, but so many things that have happened along the way, the chain of events that led you not just to these ideas, but to these specific situations and specific people really is fascinating. So I do encourage people to check out the song, The Ballad of Lavoy Finicum. Obviously, you heard it here in the show. We'll link to ways you can download that song, and as well as I know you're splitting the proceeds of that song with the family as well. So it's definitely a good reason to actually go purchase the song itself.
Absolutely. And there's 2 versions. There's one with just me and acoustic guitar, which is the original style that I've been doing for the last 3 years, is just me and an acoustic guitar. But so I have that version for sale, as well as a full band version with lap steel guitar and upright bass and electric piano and backup vocals and all that good stuff. And it really is a country western toe tapper, but it does have a very serious message for sure. And if you should go to my website, jordanpagemusic.com, you can listen to clips of it and you can learn all about me and all that good stuff.
Cool. And I know you are obviously not done with your activism. You're not done with your music, and you're not done focusing on specific situations and specific individuals to try to highlight them through your music. So why don't you let us know? I know there's the Schaeffer Cox case that you've been involved with and that you've written a song about as well. If you want to, tell us a little bit about that and anything else you've got going on while you're at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I've been really focusing on recording. I haven't been touring as much the last couple of years. I've been focusing on like cannabis freedom activism and doing a lot in that space. I've been doing a lot in the blockchain space and cryptocurrencies, and I'm a partner in a blockchain company, and we're trying to replace government with blockchain systems, and that's an ambitious project that I'm doing. But musically, I'm really focusing on recording and writing songs about specific causes that I care about. And Lavoy is a great example, and Schaeffer Cox is another great example. And he's an American political prisoner who is currently being held in a black site prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, called the CMU, Communication Management Unit. So Schaeffer is one of us, Marc. He's a liberty guy. He was in Alaska. He was running for office. He was teaching people about their rights, about the Constitution, about the principles of liberty. He was the commander of a large militia, 3,500 strong. Just the son of a pastor. He's a Christian. He's a husband. He's a father. Just a good guy, young guy. The world ahead of him, making real strides and teaching a lot of people. And he started calling out the child trafficking pedophile rings in Alaska and implicated government officials, police, judges, and was naming names. And he was targeted by the FBI for persecution. There were informants that were sent to infiltrate his life and try to get him to say incriminating things to get him in trouble. They were trying to get him to say that he would murder federal agents on tape. He refused because his message was nonviolence. He was basically tricked into saying that if federal agents were trying to kill him and his family, would he shoot back? He said, well, in that extreme case, yeah, of course I would shoot back. Who wouldn't? And for that, they used that audio recording to convict him of conspiracy to murder federal agents and gave him 36 years in federal prison for that, to silence him. He was moved from Alaska to Indiana because one of the tactics they use with people like this is to separate them from their humanity, separate them from their families so that it's impossible for their families to see them. It's impossible for their friends to see them or to have any connection with anyone that you knew before you went into these hellholes. And it's all about breaking the human spirit and breaking their minds, essentially. So they moved him. Granted, this man is a white Christian man. They move him to a 95% radical Muslim populated prison. So he is one of 5-6 guys in this prison who's not a radical Muslim. And I believe they sent him there to be killed. I mean, that like there's no other explanation for them to move him from Alaska in a federal penitentiary to Terre Haute, Indiana, to a communications management unit, which was reserved for people that have tried to blow up buildings and who have, murdered, people or like murdered large amounts of people, or who may be masterminds of terrorist cells. I mean, this is where they sent this guy, okay? Knowing that like the prosecution in his case withheld exculpatory evidence that would have exonerated him over and over and over. They were all complicit in this false imprisonment and persecution of Schaeffer. And so now he's in this prison in Indiana. Back in October, he and the other 5 men who are Christians were caught together praying with a Bible. But they were caught by a gang of radical Muslims who swore an honor killing for Allah because of these men praying together with a Bible. They grabbed one of these guys, they decapitated him with rudimentary instruments over a 15-minute period. The guards did nothing. They stood there and watched while a SWAT team scrambled. It took 15 minutes. They grabbed another one of the guys and slit his throat, tried to cut his head off. Schaeffer and the other guys saved his life, pulled him out of the fray as best they could, and the man lived. The second man lived, but the first man was murdered. He was decapitated, ISIS style. And the prison has been trying to cover this up. So they locked the prison down for a month. We didn't hear from Schaeffer. I'm in touch with his team. They didn't hear from him for a month. So we finally get word from him. He tells his lawyer everything I just told you. And for telling him that over the phone, they put him in the hellhole. Like there's the hole, and then there's the hellhole. And the hellhole is an underground dungeon that we've talked to other prisoners who have been in this dungeon. It is a dungeon. It's a pitch black dungeon. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. It's infested with snakes and rats and spiders. And he's been there for over a month. He was just let out a day or two ago. So we know that he's out and he's communicating with us again. But for getting that information outside of the prison punished him for that, for telling the truth about what had happened. So this story is going to break soon, and I believe it's going to go viral and go everywhere. So you're hearing it here first. But we're trying to get the word out about these awful, horrific, inhumane conditions, and get Schaeffer clemency because his conspiracy charge was dropped. So if there is no conspiracy charge, how can you, or no, excuse me, his solicitation charge, I misspoke. His solicitation charge was dropped. So if there's no solicitation, then how can there be a conspiracy to commit a crime? This crime was never committed.
Unbelievable.
This man is a patriot. He's no different than you or me. He has the same message, this liberty message, Mark, and he is being tortured and tormented. And there is a kill list in the prison, and he is number 2 or 3 on that list. So and he has to spend 3 hours a day now with the very men that he watched decapitate his friend. So he's got it's wild.
Unreal.
It's unreal. It made my heart sink to the floor when I first heard it. And I'm sorry to lay this burden on you and your listeners, but we have to stop this. We have to get this information out and into the hands of people that can do something about it.
Well, we're happy to help do our part and not only get the story of Lavoy Finicum out there, which there's not much we can do about it post-fact, but this is something that you can actually do something about. He is still in prison, and there is some hope to get him out at some point if we shine enough light on this. That is really a very frightening story, really.
It is a frightening story, and I wrote a song about Schaeffer to this effect. I started talking to his legal team right as all this happened. And I recorded the song in December. It's called The Persecution of Schaeffer Cox. And it's almost done in post-production. I'm working with his nonprofit, Schaeffer's Angels. We're going to put out a music video for it. We're going to push it and try to tell his story and this story that's being suppressed, and hopefully have it be part of the move to give him clemency.
Well, Jordan, I really do appreciate that you're out there not only discussing the ideas of liberty and doing so through your music, but really taking the time to shine a light on, these specific cases of injustice. Because I think in many ways, we can talk esoterically about the ideas of liberty and about theoretical injustices posed by the government, but oftentimes it takes shining a light on very specific stories and very obvious cases like both of these cases. To me, anybody who looks at them remotely objectively can see that there is some serious injustice going on here. So hopefully that can inspire people, to learn more about not just this case, but about the philosophical ideas that lead to this kind of situation.
Absolutely. And I want to see this man released and continue his mission, because he's a powerful voice for liberty, and he's been through so much that his perspective is worth so much. I mean, somebody gave me a book of his poetry and song lyrics that he wrote from prison. And it just about, back in June, he gave it to me. This guy gave it to me. And it just about broke my heart over and over again. And I actually used a few of Schaeffer's own lyrics in the song. So I'm crediting him as a partial songwriter on the song. And I would really love to be part of the effort that helps to get him released and to continue his mission.
All right. Well, Jordan Page, once again, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Keep up the great work. Before I let you go, why don't you just go through one more time how everybody can find your music and, check out all your work.
Sure. Well, the easiest way is my website, jordanpagemusic.com, JORDANPAGE music.com. I'm on Facebook. My fan page is Jordan Page Fans. My YouTube channel is Jordan Page Music. You can find me on Twitter. You can subscribe to my channels. And again, all my music is through CD Baby, and that's where we retain the most financial reward from the sale of the songs. But it's also on iTunes. It's on Amazon, Google Play Store, Spotify, Napster, you name it, it's there. And again, 50% of the proceeds from the Lavoy song go to Jeanette Finicum for her court case, and 50% of the proceeds from the persecution of Schaeffer Cox song is going to go to his foundation to fight for his cause and the cause of all political prisoners.
All right, Jordan, keep up the great work. Really do appreciate you coming on, and appreciate everything you're doing out there. All right, so keep up the great work and keep on roaring.
Thanks for having me on, Marc.
All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed my incredible interview, if I do say so myself, and the credit doesn't go to me, it goes to Jordan for having such an amazing path to becoming a libertarian, but his experience really did blow my mind and get me thinking a little bit, and we actually did dive into that. The conversation kept going for a little bit, so I did publish to Patreon a bonus segment that we did totally on the fly, wasn't part of the plan, but we delved into some of his, supernatural experiences a little bit more and talked about religion and libertarianism and the best ways to communicate those ideas to people. So we really had a very interesting bonus chat. So if you did not get enough of that conversation with Jordan Page today, head on over to Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty to check out that bonus segment. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, we also have a new Conspiracy Corner where we dive into anything and everything Bigfoot related. And as I mentioned, towards the end of this month, we will have a Patreon exclusive episode of Libertarians in Living Rooms Drinking Liquor. Anybody who joins at 10 or higher can actually see the video version of that, so you can see our beautiful, drunken libertarian faces. It's really an amazing experience, I have to say. So again, head on over to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. And we're not done here this week, folks. As you know, there's more coming your way. This Wednesday, Brian is going to smack you upside the head with his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty. And John will close things out with his hard-hitting look at the broken criminal justice system on Felony Friday. You got to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. And again, today's episode of Lions of Liberty has been brought to you by mathbot.com. The pen may be mightier than the sword, but code is even mightier than the pen. So learn how to build the tools that will bring prosperity and freedom to the world, and learn how to code at mathbot.com. That's mathbot.com. Become mighty, my friends. And until next time, live long and live free.